You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere. This is your WLAK Daily News Roundup for Lake Air, 107.5 FM and 1260 AM in Amory.
For WLAK News, I'm James Kelly. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources has announced it is no longer working to trap the bear that attacked a 69-year-old Comstock woman earlier this month. According to a press release, DNR officials have seen no sign of the bear after 2 weeks of surveillance. A number of traps set in the area caught 6 bears in total, but none of those bears were the one responsible for the unusual Barron County attack. The Comstock woman was taken to the hospital following the attack, and DNR officials say she is now in stable condition and recovering well. The body of a man who went missing on Lake Superior following a boat crash over the weekend has been recovered. According to the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, the victim was identified as 57-year-old William Linster of Superior. The crash was reported to the U.S. Coast Guard at around 7:30 a.m. on Sunday. The cause of the crash is under investigation, and officials plan to recover the sunken boat later this week. Authorities say their investigation showed signs that the boat was involved in a significant collision before drifting to where it was found. The Wisconsin Department of Revenue is reminding electric vehicle charging station owners across the state to pay their charging tax by Thursday. The charging tax was implemented on January 1st and requires electric vehicle charging station owners to pay an excise tax of 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Department of Revenue officials are also reminding charging station owners that the tax is due even if the station is not available for public use, and businesses, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations are not exempt from the tax. The Wisconsin Department of Health Services has confirmed the state's first human case of West Nile virus this year in Barron County. Wisconsin usually sees about 20 human cases of the virus each year, mostly between June and November. The agency also says 2 mosquitoes collected in Milwaukee and Lafayette counties tested positive for the virus. Officials say West Nile virus can only be spread by mosquitoes, so residents should take precautions like using insect repellent and wearing long sleeves and pants outside to minimize their risk of exposure. The deadline to apply for the Wisconsin Technology Council's 2025 Wisconsin Innovation Awards is coming up this week. The event seeks to recognize innovative ideas from companies across the state with multiple categories of awards, including fields like manufacturing, technology, education, and agriculture. Companies can apply for the awards themselves, or residents can nominate them for recognition. The application and the nomination process are available online and can be submitted until Thursday. The awards ceremony will be held in November. Months after emerging victorious in the most expensive state Supreme Court race in American history, Justice-elect Susan Crawford is finally set to be sworn in this week. Crawford will officially take her seat on the court for a 10-year term on Friday, with a ceremony in the state capitol rotunda at 4:30 p.m. Her victory in the April election preserved a 4-3 liberal majority on the state's highest court. State Appeals Court Judge Chris Taylor has announced her candidacy for the 2026 election, which could further solidify the liberal majority. A Shell Lake man has been sentenced to prison in relation to a high-speed chase that also resulted in drug charges. According to court documents, law enforcement authorities attempted to stop a vehicle being driven by 44-year-old Dustin Lee Klopp in Spooner for a defective headlamp in January of 2024. Klopp attempted to flee the traffic stop, reaching speeds of up to 120 miles per hour before fleeing on foot and hiding in a railroad facility. He was charged with fleeing law enforcement and delivering methamphetamine after being taken into custody. The Bayfield County Planning and Zoning Committee voted to approve the permit for a proposed cell phone tower in the town of Russell, despite receiving significant pushback from the local community last week. The tower was proposed by Verizon Wireless to address a gap in cell coverage along Highway 13 near Red Cliff. Area residents raised concerns about the effects the tower could have on property values, aesthetics, and tourism, but the attorney leading the project argued that those concerns were not legal grounds to not approve the application. The Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development has reported a decrease in unemployment rates across the state for the month of June. The new data released last week found that the majority of cities in the state saw a decrease in unemployment rates. Among the 35 largest cities, 24 of them saw the unemployment rate drop, 5 cities saw no change, and 6 cities saw an increase in unemployment. Over the last year, 22 of those cities have seen a drop in unemployment, with 6 remaining at a steady level and 7 seeing an increase in unemployment. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is reminding residents that the deadline for special hunting and trapping seasons is coming up. Residents interested in applying for bobcat and fisher permits only have until Friday to apply. Harvest permits will be awarded through a preference point lottery system. Residents interested in the first sharp-tailed grouse hunt in the state since 2018 also have until Friday to apply for a limited permit drawing. The sharp-tailed grouse hunting season this fall will run from October 18th to November 9th. For WLAK News, I'm James Kelly.
It's the Brewers and the Cubs. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. Baseball tonight as the Crew hosts the Cubs in Game 2 of their series. Milwaukee with a win last night, 8-4. But a rough start for Jacob Mizorowski. The Miz giving up 3 runs and throwing 40 pitches in the top of the first. Was it as rough as it looked?
I mean, yeah. It's a long inning, so everything, sucks. You start feeling a little loose, and every pitch keeps in away just that little bit. Definitely the settling down and getting the 10 outs. Thought I did my job in getting us in a position that we can succeed.
Brewers manager Pat Murphy.
First inning, we're down 3-0. He feels horrible. His adrenaline. I learned a lot about him, and it just goes to show you the kid can pitch, not just throw.
NFL, Packers training camp continues with practice in pads. Running back Marshawn Lloyd injured in the first set of downs after being clobbered by former Raiders defensive back Nate Hobbs. Lloyd ended up sitting out the rest of practice. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. As far as episodic TV goes, nothing gets me more excited than a well-done cop show. There have been 2 spin-offs so far from the Amazon Prime cop show Bosch, a show about a stubborn, uncompromising police detective played by Titus Welliver. In a new cop show, Welliver heads up the cast in Westies. According to Collider, Welliver plays Glenn Keenan, a Vietnam vet and gritty beat cop. The story is set in the early 80s in Hell's Kitchen in New York and follows the Westies, a real-life Irish street gang, as they try to carve out a piece of the action despite being a much smaller force than the Mafia's 5 families of New York. Welliver calls his character deeply corrupt and very dark, but also nuanced. Joining him in the cast are J.K. Simmons, Tom Brittney, Jessica Francis Duke, and just added additions Sarah Bolger and Stanley Morgan. The Westies will drop on MGM Plus sometime in 2026. Phineas and Ferb are coming back in 2026. Season 5 is currently on the air, but it's being called a revival. At Comic-Con last week in San Diego, the producers celebrated said revival of the Disney show, which launched 10 new episodes June 5th, and announced that the next batch of episodes will drop next year. Phineas and Ferb debuted in 2007, but went off the air in 2015. The USA Network has announced it has canceled Resident Alien, despite the show carving out a nice following over its 4 seasons. The announcement was made right before the season 4 finale last week. The sci-fi comedy is about an alien who is also a doctor in a small town and tries to conceal his identity. The show is based on a book of the same title. Executive producer Chris Sheridan says he wasn't totally caught off guard by the surprise, and for what it's worth, says the season 4 finale episode is his favorite of the whole series. During the recent SNL 50th anniversary show, Dan Aykroyd was a notable absence. He has finally come forward with why he did not attend the celebration broadcast. Putting it very simply, the 73-year-old Aykroyd said he wanted to sit with his family and eat his own popcorn while he got to watch the nostalgic fun. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone went there in the season premiere of season 27. They discussed the episode during Comic-Con, as well as their struggles with Paramount to get the show on the air as it was seen. During the episode, the writers showed a naked commander-in-chief walking through the desert and did not blur over any private parts, albeit pretty cartoonish private parts. The writing team said they argued back and forth with Paramount for 4 days about what they would show and what they wouldn't. But in the end, Parker and Stone were unrelenting and got their way. The writers say they are fully expecting to be sued by a certain Oval Office resident. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
We have a chance of a few scattered thunderstorms today with a high in the low 80s this afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy. We're going to drop down into the upper 50s, low 60s tomorrow. Mostly sunny with a high in the mid to upper 70s. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Temperature now 65.
That's your WLAK Daily News Roundup from Civic Media. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Find more news at lakeair.radio. The national news cycle never stops. but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.